So let's say we have a thread, a one-dimensional string, and we curve it, and what you get is a two-dimensional loop. And now that two-dimensional loop we have there was created when we curved the one-dimensional string. Now let's say we have a 2D sheet of paper, and we then try to curve it. You get some curvature into it, and what you get after that is a manifold. That curve that you will get a wiggles on that two dimensions, and to describe those wiggles on two dimensions you require three dimensions. So a curvature in 2D sheet got a 3D thing, a three-dimensional manifold which has some wiggles on it. So curving a 1D string giving us a string, giving us a loop, and curving a two-dimensional manifold gave us a three-dimensional manifold, a three-dimensional structure where the paper has wiggles on it. But let's say we have a sponge, and we same do there. What we do here is that we curve it, like we squeeze it in case of three dimensions. So, well, the part of the sponge going extra dimension, like exactly, because in as you see, like if you apply your analogy, we had a one-dimensional string. When it curved, we got a loop. When we had was 2D dimensional thing, we curved it, we got a 3D thing. Now we have a 3D thing like a sponge, and when we try to squeeze it, then do we get a four-dimensional thing? Think about it. So it's not that easy that to we get a sponge squeeze and got in four dimension, because if that part of sponge got in four dimension, then we could not have like ever seen it. For example, a part like, so it's like, let's say we curve a sponge into four dimension, and what will happen there is a part of the sponge will go in four dimension, and we can't really see it in our universe. It will like oh my gosh, like half of the sponge in four dimension, half of the sponge is in our universe. Now you will wonder then where is the half of the sponge? So because our mind can't really imagine more than three dimensions. So what's exactly happening here? The squeezing equipment does not take into four dimension, because here what is happening here is that when we curve the loop, we are not checking what in case of sponge, what you're having is we are squeezing the sponge, so it's not getting a four dimension. Let me give an example. For example, we stretched we curved a string by into a loop. But in reality, what we're doing here is in three-dimensional case, what we're doing is we are stretching the string, and that does not change the dimension of the string. Now same in case of paper, we curved it, we got a 3D thing, but in reality, in 3D thing, in case of sponge, what we're doing here is we're stretching the paper. We're changing the dimensions of the paper. Like, let's instead of paper, you imagine a rubber sheet, and we're you're stretching it, you're changing its dimension, but that changing in dimension is not gonna make it a 3D thing. It's gonna stay 2D only. So the same thing is happening here. When you squeeze a sponge, you're just changing its dimension. You are not getting into four dimension. Now a bulk being can get that sponge into four dimensions, but as humans, we don't have any idea, because we can't even think about four dimension. We don't have an idea about how to curve that sponge so that a part of it gets into the fourth dimension. So when we squeeze it, the conclusion is that when we squeeze it, it does not go in fourth dimension, because the thing is that if it gone to fourth dimension, then we could have the one of the part could have missed. In our universe, we could not be able to see it, and that would violate the first law of thermodynamics, which says the total energy in our universe remains constant. So provided we have a part of a sponge in other universe, in some other universe, we would have that law violated, because that other part of sponge is getting into some extra dimensions, and so it is not in space time, but it is like in other dimensions. So that violates the law of conservation. That's why we can't really, as humans at least, can't really curve the sponge to extra dimension. Maybe that can be this can be done by bulk beings, but that's a matter of future. We don't know whether they exist, or how they will do it or not. Okay.